All right, so project name, we call it title opener, title sequence. This will be due by the 22nd of January. We're going to finish it up today. We basically drew out what it's supposed to look like last class. This class, we're going to be animating it. Let me make sure that I am, yes, I am recording. Project description. It is 18, yep. Yep, it's due last year, so you guys are all late and you'll fail. So project description, we are creating a title bumper to use at the beginning of each one of our projects. Okay, our our objectives is to be able to create basic shapes and text. Animate using ease and graph editor or speed graph. Render as a movie. And finally, organize will be the last one. Okay, so this one is really, it's simple as far as what we're going to be doing. If you've never touched After Effects before this class, which most of you probably haven't, to the point of understanding what's going on, just those 4 things are things that we're going to use over and over again, but obviously things that are very tricky to use if you've never touched it. Okay, cool. Everyone good so far? I can scroll down? Good, okay. There's no planning for this one, so this is just, my vision of what this title bumper is what we're turning in. At any point, you could always come back and redo this title bumper if you wanted to, because that way it stands out a little bit more. It's not the static, boring one that we're doing the first day. Mm-hmm.
What was after
render? Organize with 4 exclamation points. Yeah. So there's no planning for this specific one. For your turn-ins, you will be turning in your project folder. So check that box. And for this specific one, I want everything. Okay, so that means that you're not going to go through and filter out some things. Sometimes I only want the essence of what I need to open up your file, like your references or whatever. I don't need that. But for this one, I want everything. That way I can make sure that your outside structure is staying organized and your inside structure is staying organized too. Okay. The first couple projects, I will be very hard on you to make sure you're staying organized. And then later on, I just won't check them because by that point you should be good. Okay, should be good is the key. If you go to the next After Effects class, they spend this much time talking about it because you should know it by now. And if you go to the even next After Effects class, they spend even less time. Okay. We will be turning in a movie, so you can check that box also. And the movie length, I think we did 5 seconds. Just put a blank seconds for now. I forget what the actual time is, but it's like 5 or 6 seconds. Just put 5 or 6 seconds. 5 or 6 seconds. Okay. At 30 frames per second. And then our resolution will be 960 by 540. Okay, so your name, obviously you know what goes there. Class name and number is MACA 1900, Introduction to Motion Graphics. And then our points possible. I always have to look this up because there's so much stuff. I can't remember anything. Title, 3 points. So 3 points are possible for this one. Okay, so the way it's going to work is by the end of next class on Monday, I won't make it due today because you may modify, you may tweak, you may whatever. By the end of class Monday, we will have started on the next project, and by then you would also have rendered your stuff out. So you're going to turn in your sheet, so you'll have your sheet completely filled out. You'll have gone through and made sure that you've done all the objectives and you know what they're talking about. It's not just whatever, I'm just checking these off mentally. You made sure your project folder has everything, it's organized, blah, blah, blah. You'll turn in the sheet, you'll drop your project folder into the server where I want it, and then that's where I know you've turned it in, I can grade it, I'll write it on here, record it in Canvas, and then hand that back to you, okay? Questions on the turn-in process? No, okay. I recorded this. All right, so I'm going to just save this inside here. As we get further into the semester, those assignment sheets, right now I'm walking you through, here's what we're going to do. Later on, they're just going to be mixed into the lecture, okay? So when I say this is how long it's going to be, I'm not going to pull up the assignment sheet and say now fill this out on the later ones. At first I will. Later on, you will know what sizes things should be. Because when you meet with a client, they need to know what is my end resolution, how many frames per second, how long is this animation, what are the criteria that you need to have inside that animation. Cool? Cool. Close that, close everything else. Whoops. I'll just minimize that. Sweet. So last we left off, we had all of our stuff laid out. Cool. All right, so let me close these, close this, and that's not this class. So don't worry. Music. Okay, so anyone here study music before? Okay, if I'm wrong about anything, just ignore it. All right, so in music, there is a measure, right? From one bar to the other bar is a measure. Is that right? Good. Okay. Inside the measures are notes. And depending on what the time signature is, the 4/4 is how many beats are in each one of those. So if this is 4, then all of these add up to 4 within that. Okay? So when we do an animation, what we're going to do is we're going to set it up so that we have specific beats that we're going to hit throughout that. Okay? So in how they create music is it's not just like one steady beat the entire time. They mix it up. Some are fast, some are long, some are short, some are loud, some are quiet. There's a whole bunch of stuff. We're going to focus on strictly making a line of straight beats and then just isolating certain beats for certain actions to hit. Now this will come into play when you do any of your animations ever. If you want your animations to really sell themselves, they need to have audio behind them. The first one, we are not going to have audio for this, okay? Later assignments, we will have audio and we will be timing up things up and syncing things up. But I want you to start thinking about it now. All right, so if you don't, what's going on? There we go. If you don't have your stuff open, open your stuff. All right, just so you can see where we're working on our projects, this is the different sizes of resolutions that are available and different sizes of formats that people typically work. So VCD is like the old square TV, like the tube TVs. I don't think I have one. No, I don't. Switched them all out. We used to have one here. Whatever. But it's basically like a 4:3 ratio, very blocky-ish. And then there's DVD quality, which is a little bit wider than that. And then there's 720 by 1280 by 720. 1920 by 1080, and then there's 2K, and then there's 4K. We are like right over here. We're like right in that green area. The bigger you get, the slower the station is going to go. So that's why we're down here and not way up there. Even at 1280 by 720, it would take longer for these stations to work, especially if you consider the fact that, like, let's say I videotape something at 4K, that file would be huge, and then I have to do stuff on top of it, and then I have to render it out. Those files eat up a lot of space. So while you're playing, typically fine to be here. If you're creating stuff for your portfolio for like an actual reel, and let's say I want to use that reel for the next year, I probably want to go out to at least 720p, okay? And obviously the more pixels you have, the more data you can put inside it, the more stuff you can have going on. Here's like another one that says the actual pixels. Cool. All right, everyone's up. Yes, ma'am. Yep. Any of the sizes can be changed. You can update it. It just has to be, like if I render it out to a movie, those are pixels. While I'm inside After Effects, it's all vector. So if I scaled up my text enormous, it's vector, so it'll just resize. So I just have to make sure that I tell it that you are vector, or it's called continuously rasterize, which it basically like cleans it up. But yes, you can. All right, everyone's After Effects is up? Cool. All right, so what we want to do is we want to get a beat going in here that is consistent, okay? So we're going to make what's called a null. So under your layer, there's a new thing, just like we went to solid, but further down is null. And if you want to give your hand a workout, Control-Alt-Shift-Y, and then try to do that with one hand. It's even more of a workout. Okay. So how many elements do we have on this sheet that we're going to be animating? Seven, right? We go to the layer count, minus the null, we have 7, okay? So each one of these elements will be animated in. So what we're going to do is we're going to try to create these little beats, or little tick marks along the way that are nicely evenly spaced out. And then we're going to bunch up the ones that are correct, or that would go together, and then animate those to those beats, okay? So what the null's purpose is just to hold where those tick information is. Now what I could do is I could look at my timeline. I know you can't see it terribly too well because of the light, but that's fine. With the timeline here, I could basically, this is 6 seconds. Let's just pretend that it was 7 seconds. I could go 1 second each. That's boring though, right? Because we want to have a mix of things happening inside there. So I have 7 things that will be animating in, and then I have 7 things I'll be animating out. I'm not going to animate all of those out individually, but I will animate them all in individually. Meaning, Sarcona will come in and Sean will come in. It won't happen at the same time. Okay? So each one is an individual asset coming in. When they go out, though, everything will just go out at the same time. Okay? So basically, I will have 8 different things animated. So where the null comes in is I'm going to make little tick marks. So the first thing I need to do is make sure that my work area, my workspace, is all the way over. So wherever you see your little blue bar that we played with last time, just stretch it out so it fits the entire side of that area. Maybe I can fit that up there. Okay, so make sure that this little blue tab fits all the way in the end. Okay, so our work area now fits the entire thing. On your numeric keypad, there is an asterisk that is usually the times the multiplier. Just watch mine in my null, okay? Wherever my ticker is, if I hit that multiplier, it adds a marker in on my null, all right? Now what's neat about that is that I can hit the play button, let it play through. Right now it's just going to play back at real time. As it's playing through, I can just hit that button. As long as it doesn't stop. Why did you stop? Let's try that again. Let's delete all the markers. I'm going to hit the play button. There he goes. So if I'm trying to get some good beat or something and trying to match things up, that's how I can do it. So now I have a beat that's already there. Now what that gives me, apart from just kind of breaking up the timeline and dividing it up manually, is I have something that I've kind of synced out myself in the real world, not just looking at it on a screen, right? So I know that if that is a beat, right, that's a looping pattern that I can use over and over again, that works for me, so I can use that inside of my sequence here, okay? So for now, like I said, to keep it simple for the first one, why aren't you deleting? There you go. We're just going to try to hit it the same tempo the entire time. Okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to rewind it to the beginning. You're going to hit the space bar, and then you're just going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. That's it. It doesn't matter if it's perfect. Hit the space bar and then hit that asterisk and try to get some nicely spaced out stuffs. Yes, sir. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to animate this stuff. Now, all of our pieces right now are right at the beginning of our composition. Okay, so every one of these is on the far left side, and that's perfect because what we can do is if we animate each one of these at the very beginning, then it's simply a matter of just offsetting each one of these pieces to where we want them to start or where we want them to end or come in or whatever, okay? So for now, just ignore the text. What we're going to do is animate these 3 pieces coming in. Now, those 3 are in a group, right? Because they're pretty much the same kind of element. My name, Sean Sarcona, is another group. Angry Bird in Assignment 1 is another group. So I have 3 groups. So if I look at my stuff here, hold on a second. Let me delete my markers, hold on. There we go, it's good enough. I was like at a weird space, so you can move these over too, like if you don't like where they're at, whatever. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to animate those 3 elements the same exact way. I can tweak them a little bit, but I'm going to animate them the same way, and then I can just offset them to their respective spots, okay? So the way that I want to animate this is I'm going to have the center one come in from one side, and then the top one come in from, let's say, the opposite side, and the bottom one also come in from the opposite side. That way there's some contrast as to how those elements are coming in, okay? So I'm going to go to, let's say 7 frames. So I click on this little time clicker, and I hit 7. Okay, so where it says the time code, click on it and hit 7, and that will take you to 7 frames, not 7 seconds. Okay, because I want that transition to take 7 frames to come in. So when that blue bar sweeps into my scene, I want that to take 7 frames. Okay, so that's why I'm setting that to 7. Before, when we did our animations, what we would do is we would take the item that was here on the screen, and we would move it off the screen, and we would set a keyframe. Then we would move up, and then we would bring it back, right? That's what we used to do. So now what we're going to do is just work backwards. We know where we want it to end up. Let's set that keyframe first, and then we'll go backwards and set where we want it to be off the screen. It just makes our process a lot easier because we don't have to move it off screen, set a keyframe, then bring it back into the exact same spot it just was, okay? So we're at 7 frames here. I'm going to grab all 3 of these items in the bottom and hit P, and then turn on my keyframes. Okay, so I grabbed all 3 of those, hit the bars. Sorry, yes. On mine, they're the bars. They should be the bars on yours also. P, yeah. P brings up position, remember. And then we can click the stopwatch to say, I want to set keyframes on position. Okay, we're not touching the text right now. We're only focusing on just those 3 bars in the background. Cool, we have a keyframe on the P positions. All right. So now we're going to rewind it to the beginning. So just grab your blue ticker and bring it back to the beginning. Okay, you can also hit the home key. That takes you to the beginning. You can also hit the I key, which brings us to the beginning of that specific selection. And now we want to move them where we want them to be at the start of the animation. So the start of the animation, this top one and this bottom one will be off to one side, and this one will be off to the other side. It makes no difference which way you go except for how you want it to look. So don't be afraid to try something, see if it works. If it doesn't, then swap it around. So I'm going to grab, I'm not going to do this because that might move it up and down. I'm just going to come down here and grab the first digit and just drag it over. Okay, until it's just off screen. And then I'll grab the other one and drag it so it's just off screen the other way. All right, so now we have our basic movement of our item. Basic movement in After Effects is very boring. Does anyone remember what we did last time to change our keyframes to not so boring? The curves is what we did, but before we edited the curves, we have to hit either grab all the keyframes like this, so you can marquee all the keyframes like I'm doing here, or you can just click right on the position and then control click on position, then control click position, and then you would hit F9. I can't do that because that's my pause button for recording, so I will right click and go to Keyframe Assistant, Easy Ease. Okay, so we have to Easy Ease before we go into the graph editor. If we try to do it the other way, there's nothing to edit. Okay, so grab your keyframes, hit F9. They should look like hourglasses. Cool. Any objections? Cool. Now we go to the graph editor. And this is one of the reasons that we want to be able to keep everything locked together at the same spot, because it makes our graph editing that much easier to edit, because everything is literally right on top of each other. So if I offset any of these, I would basically have like a graph for each of these, curves for each of these. It's very difficult to edit the entire thing. Everything's right on top of each other because we set it up like this, so it's fantastic. Yours probably didn't zoom in. There's a fit all to graph views, or whatever, fit all graphs to view. You can click that button, and then it'll fit all your graphs to the view, which means just, resize it. So now we're just going to marquee, and then mentally we're kind of thinking about how we want this to come in. Do we want it to be fast at the beginning and then slow, or do we want it to be slow and then fast? How do we want that to happen? If you want it slow and then fast, it should look like this. Okay, slow because it's very shallow, and then fast goes like that. Okay? Slow and then fast. If we want it to go the other way, fast and then slow, we would go this way. Whoopsie, I didn't marquee them and then drag it.
Where's the hourglass button again?
F9.
Oh.
All right, so this is where we're at. We have our stuff just animating in, like that. Okay, so at any point, we can adjust these keyframes. So don't ever get locked into, I need to get the animation timed out perfectly before I go on to the next step. It's basically what I do is I'll just kind of put in a rough animation of where things are going to be and then see how that feels. Does it feel like things are going too fast or too slow, or I'm not seeing it enough? Then I can go back and start moving keyframes around and start adjusting stuff. Okay, it does you no good to try to nail the exact timing on your first go at that. Okay. So now we can jump out of the graph editor, and then if you hit P, it'll hide your position stuffs. Okay? So what we want to do now is we want to time out when these things are actually going to come in. Okay? So if I know that I'm grouping those first three items together, then I should have some way to kind of separate what happens at first to what happens next, right? So if I do all of my stuff, boom, 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 right away, there's no break in it, and we need to have that break. So if I look at my little tickers up here, I have 1, 2, 3 ticks right here. And then this fourth one, I'm going to not delete. I definitely could delete this. I'm just going to ignore it, okay? So what I'm going to do is my first 3 animations, I'm going to line up with these 3 ticks. So I just grab any one of these, and if you hold Shift, it'll actually snap right to it. And I'm just lining up this little tick with the beginning of that. Okay, so now when I hit play, I should see cool. Sweet. All right, so now we have that. Boom, boom, boom. Now eventually you may come back and you may tweak things, but the cool thing about doing your animation like this is if we have this exact method of here's where my animation is happening, if I come into my null at some point, I delete all those tickers and I make brand new ones, all I have to do to reline my stuff up is to reposition these things so that they're in line with the new ones. So that'll make the whole process a lot quicker. Like, for instance, don't do this now, you can play with this later. I play this, of course mine is perfect, so I wouldn't change it, but let's pretend that it wasn't perfect. I would just delete my markers, I would go back in here. Let's pretend one morning I didn't have any caffeine and I did that. That's nowhere near enough keyframes. So I have to delete those. And then one morning I had too much caffeine. That's like way too quick. Okay? But the process is still the same. It's simply a matter of figuring out where the tickers are and then just lining these up. Now there's nothing wrong with having maybe too many ticks than you need, because you can always say, I'm going to grab these two, skip two, these two, skip two, or use every other one. There's nothing wrong with that either. Obviously, having a million in there doesn't help you out. But the more you have, the tighter they are, the faster this animation is going to go. Question? This is better because we know exactly where this animation starts. If I hit P and I start moving these keyframes, the second I hit P, I don't know where that is. Okay? So you always want to have your animation, wherever that start of it is, that's where we want those keyframes to be. Unless, for instance, it starts on frame and then like halfway down and then moves, like off frame, then we would have it there. Okay.
So if my animations kind of start at like the very start of the video, I shouldn't touch them? Or?
No, you can leave them there.
Like the bar.
What?
Like,
the bar?
should I move like the bar at all as my animation starts?
Yes. Your keyframe and your animation and the layer should be lined up. So here's a start, here's a keyframe.
Okay,
here's
yeah, I'm just saying my keyframes like start at the very beginning.
like back here.
Yeah. Well, I have to start in the end.
I'll have to look at that in a second.
Yeah, no.
Let me fix this timing thing here real quick. Oops, don't want to start in the middle. It's a bad spot to start. Perfect. There we go. So this is going to be lined up to that. It's even more spread out than it was a second ago. Good enough. Okay. So that's good enough for where we're at now. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to jump back to the very beginning, and we're going to animate our name coming in. So our name will be a second grouping of items. Okay. So we're going to have 3 things animated, a space, 2 things animated, a space, and then 2 things animated. Okay. So we could have our name come in any direction we want. So I could, just like we did a second ago, just go bloop and have my name just come in from the sides. But like we talked about when we watch those videos, we want to have a variety of things. We don't want the same thing over and over and over again. It's fine for us to do that with Angry Bird and assignment, but we have to have something to break it up with in the middle. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have my name come down and then my other name come up. But what I want to do with this, let me jump ahead here. What I want to do with this is I want to have my Sean actually come in from underneath this blue. So it's going to pop in from underneath that blue. The way I do that is just make sure that it's obviously under that layer. Okay? And the same thing with the Sarcona. I want that to also come in from the other blue. So now when I move it, see how it like sneaks behind it? So that's what I want to do. I want to animate it kind of popping in. All right? Now none of that matters at the moment because we can't see that at the very beginning. All right? Once we animate it, we can move the layers around, and that doesn't affect animation at all. It just affects what we're seeing. So I'm going to go to put these back where they were at the very beginning. Okay? I'm going to hit my P for position. I'm going to go up 7 frames. And I'm going to set my keyframe for the position of my names. Rewind it, and do pretty much the exact same process I did before. It's just now I'm moving them up and down versus left and right. Okay? So I just did that. And then if you remember the easy ease in the graph editor, you can do that too. All right, so once you get these animated, you get the easy ease, you get the graph editor. Those 3 steps we will do for nearly every single thing we animate. Set keyframes, easy ease, graph editor. Set keyframes, easy ease, graph editor. So now we're just going to offset it so that it's lined up with the other ones. So like I said, we're going to do 3 bunched together. So this point, and this point are all those. I'm going to skip one of the points, and then I'm going to put my name on the other 2. So however you want your name to show up, if you want like first name, last name, which is, it makes more sense, then do your first name on the first ticker past it, and then the second last name in the second ticker. So I should have 1, 2, 3, space 1, 2. Okay? And then I'll space these, or put these underneath those 2 blue layers. 1, 2, 3, space 1, 2. Sweet. Okay, so we've animated the position of the bars left and right. We animated our name coming in up and down from that. We could definitely do Angry Bird and assignment 1 coming in from the sides. Because we broke it up with the Sean Sarcona up and down, totally acceptable. But what we're going to do is animate the assignment 1 and Angry Bird popping into frame, okay? So how do we want to do that? I want to watch mine first so you can see. So what we're going to do is we're going to scale them into existence, all right? So if I go here and I just scale this, look at how it's scaling. That looks odd how it's scaling like that. What I want it to do is eventually I want to be able to, like a bubble, kind of like a boop, like that. So I want to be able to come up and go down. This doesn't let me do that. So what do I need to change? Do you know what I need to change? Yeah. So that little pivot point that's in the corner, I want that to be right at the center of it. Do you remember the hotkey? Because I want to know. It's Y, yes. So you're going to hit Y on your Angry Bird, and you're going to click and drag this little bullseye thing to the center. If you hold Control, it will snap right to the center point. Okay? Now, don't put it right at the center. I actually want it to be down here at the bottom of it. Okay? Because I don't want to like go out all the way. I want it to like grow upwards. Okay? So put it at the bottom of the Angry Bird in the center. And then the same thing for assignment 1, but opposite. Put that at the top. I want the assignment 1 to be up here for the pivot, so centered and at the top. And then I want the Angry Bird one to be centered and at the bottom. All right, so now that we have those, we're going to animate the scales of these 2 properties. The process is exactly the same. So I go to 7 frames. Instead of doing position, I'm doing scale. So I keyframe scale, rewind it to the beginning, type in 0. Now the only difference I'm going to do here, watch the animation of this. Okay, that's boring, right? Even if I go and easy ease these, and even if I go into the graph editor, you'll see the graph looks exactly the same regardless of what you have selected. It's just speed is what we're changing. Okay, so if I go in here and still play with this, it definitely comes in and looks nice, like boom, like it pops onto the screen. But what I want to do is I want to give it a little bit more life, so I'm going to do what's called an overshoot, where instead of it just going boom and stopping, it's going to go, okay, so it's going to get bigger and then shrink back down. So I'm going to go to right before it lands. So this is at 5 frames. And I'm going to make this even bigger. So like 117, 117, sure. So now watch it. So you see how now it kind of like pops into frame, bloop, and then rests. Okay? And then you'll just offset it again, way down here at the end. Giving, again, another little buffer between them. Do, 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 do. Okay, so set your scale keyframes. All right, sweet. So, So everything's synced out. Like I said before, if we wanted to change our timing of any of those, we definitely could change our timing on any one of those pieces. What I want to do now is I want to get rid of everything, okay? So the idea with this is that we would have a video that we want to show, and what we want to do is not just like, boom, here's the video starting up right away. We want to have some sort of title sequence that starts up, and it starts off with nothing. So if you look at the beginning of this, there's nothing there. It starts up and shows, here's what our title is, you know, what are we going to be viewing? And then when it disappears, our next video would be starting, okay? So I don't want a huge time lapse between one and the other. I don't want 7 seconds of us seeing this because that's way too long. The way that it's set up, Sean Sarcona, assignment 1, Angry Bird, done. Someone should be able to read that, okay? If they can't, obviously they can pause it. And then getting rid of everything, I want basically the entire screen to be cleared again, so we're starting off with nothing, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to have everything just kind of like fall away, okay? Like it just fell apart, all right? So this one, all of these are already synced up to where they are at. I'm not going to touch those. Those are locked into, as far as where their layers are, those are good. What I want to do now is I want to grab all of my layers and I want to hit P for position and then hold down R, or Shift, and hit R. Okay, so grab all your layers, we don't need the null, but all the layers, and hit P for position and then hold down Shift and hit R. Because just like before, we can do things very linearly. We just move it off, like very boring, just boop, it's gone. But we want to make it feel like it's falling apart, okay? That's what we want to do. So on any one of these given items, I don't know whose this is. So on any one of these items, I could just have it move straight down, but what we're going to do is have it go like this, right? So it's going to do just like the scale. It's going to come up a little bit, it's going to rotate then, and then come down, okay? Every one of the items that we have there. Now the way we do this is that we're going to set all the keyframes in line, set them all up so that they do the exact same thing, and then we'll go through and offset the keyframes, not the layers. Up to this point, we've been offsetting the layers. We're going to offset just the keyframes. So watch me do it first, then we'll do it together, and then I'll walk around, okay? So like I said, I don't want this to take a terribly long time, so I'm literally going to take 10 frames. Let me see. That's good there, that's good there. All right. So I'm going to start here at 425. Yours is probably at a different spot, but I'm going to start at 425. It gives roughly a second of animation, or a second of time for them to view the entire piece all put together. So I'm going to go about here, and I need to set position keyframes and rotate keyframes. So if I hit position on my Angry Bird here, notice how it sets position for Angry Bird. Because I have assignment 1 also selected, it sets keyframes there. No keyframes are set for the deep colors, these background colors there, or for my name. My names and the stripes already have position keyframes set on them. So what I have to do is there's a little diamond right there. If I click the diamond, that will set keyframes for those. Then I'm going to do the same thing for rotation. Click that. Make sure that if I were to just move this off, every one of those items has a keyframe to start, okay? So I'm saying at this point I want to start the animation. From the start of the timeline way over here, all the way to there, you're doing whatever, but at this point, that's where I'm going to start this animation. Then I'm going to go up to, let's say, 10 frames, and I'm just going to grab everything and just pull it straight down. Okay, and then I'll give some random rotations. So in no particular order, I'm just going to rotate that one a little bit, rotate this one a little bit, rotate that, rotate this one. Got to move him down further if he's going to do that much rotation. That one, that one, that one. Okay, so this is what I have so far. It's pretty awesome. Bloop. Everything just disappears. Okay? So now in order to get it so that they pop up and move up a little bit more, I'm going to scoot up a frame and then just move everything up. Okay, so I just moved up 2 frames, not just 1, 2 frames. Moved everything up, and then I'm going to ease everything. So right click, keyframe, ease. Okay. So that gives it a little bit of bounce upwards and then coming down. So again, makes it a little bit more interesting. And then the final thing I'll do is I'll just grab this cluster of keyframes, and I'm just offsetting them. So you can see how I'm just kind of moving them back and forth. No particular order, just kind of grabbing them and just scooting them so they're all not lined up in that straight line. Right? Again, it adds a little bit more interest to it because now the pieces are moving at different times and they're kind of offset. This is not synced up to any one of my keyframes here at the very end. That's fine because they're all offset, because there's some sort of trickly type thing at the end of this. Okay? Now to get rid of all those keyframes, I'm just going to grab everything and hit delete, and then it goes back to where it was. All right? So now let's do this one together. So grab all your stuff if you haven't grabbed all your stuff, and then move your ticker to an appropriate time on your timeline. And then you're just going to hit P, hold down Shift and hit R, and then you're going to click the stopwatch for position and rotation. And then click the diamond on any one that doesn't already have a keyframe. The little diamond on the far left there. Okay, so if I look at the composition here, I see diamond, 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 diamond. All the diamonds are bright blue. There's no hollow diamonds. You have no diamonds. You should visit. So I zoom out, I grab everything, and just hold down Shift after I've clicked it first, and just drag it straight down off the comp. And then just go through and just randomly rotate there, rotate here. Nothing crazy. I mean, you don't want to go like 360 degrees or 180 degrees. That's too much. Just a slight bend to it. All right, 1 second. And then once you have these lined up, everything's looking like this. Then you can start to offset the keyframes. Remember, at this point, we're not grabbing this and moving it because that would move my entire animation. I only want to grab that section of keyframes and just offset them a little bit. So I just do a marquee around these 4 and then scoot it over a couple frames. These 4, a couple frames. Don't go any more than like 2 frames in any direction because it'll freak out. You don't even have to move some of them. You know, one of them at the exact spot that it is fine.
Is there a way I could add like a second, or not a second, but like up to 2 frames?
What do you mean?
Is there a way I could, like, because mine's at 6 seconds, is there a way I could make it smaller?
No. All right, you can continue playing with that after. I want to show one more thing, and then I will let you play while I come around and check your drawings. So I turned on my motion blur 2. Remember, that is a viable thing that you could also add to yours, or should add to yours, to give it obviously the feeling of having motion. Without it, everything looks too crystal clear. Okay, so it really feels a bit more powerful when it has that. Okay, the other thing that you could add to this too, under this effects and presets, this is a nice thing to be able to search for stuff. So if I want to find something like a drop shadow, I could do that. It's also under layer effects, drop shadow. But if you don't remember that, then you can search for drop shadow, and you can drop a drop shadow on stuff. So I'm going to drop a drop shadow on my blue layer here. And just like Photoshop, I'm going to play with the direction of this. I'm going to play with the distance. I'm going to play with the softness. And now that feels like there's actually some depth there. It actually feels like there's like a thickness. The cool thing about this compared to something like Photoshop, is I can actually copy this drop shadow. So I just click on that and hit Control C. I go to the other one and hit Control V, and then I just change the direction. So now this, again, it feels like there's a bit more depth to the animation versus just that. Okay? So that's another thing that you could add to this as well. We could also do some color corrections. I told you before that I wanted to show you how we can tweak colors of our stuff without having to go through. If we get to this point and I want to change my colors, I have to change it on Sean Sarcona, the background 3 things, and then Angry Birds in assignment 1. That's way too much work for me to do. So if I go to Layer New, just like Photoshop, there are adjustment layers. So adjustment layers work very similar. Whatever's underneath it is affected by the adjustment layer. So if I take this adjustment layer and I go to, same thing as Photoshop, hue and saturation, right? You've used that before. I drop hue and saturation onto the adjustment layer. Now I can go here and cycle my hue. So now I can make it purple. Now I can make it red. Now I can make it orange or whatever. Okay? Now some of these combinations are not going to work. That doesn't work. I can't read Angry Bird or assignment 1. It actually hurts my eyes to look at that. I could also go to colorize, and it'll basically flatten out the color just like Photoshop would do, and then I can pick whatever color I want from this mix. So that, again, is something that I could play with. I could also drop the adjustment layer below certain layers, and that will allow me to adjust just those layers there and not the other ones. Okay? So that is something that you could definitely play with inside here just to change your colors. I actually like that, I think, and I think that's cool. Okay? There's also a levels in here, so you can go to levels. You could also just double click. So if I just double click levels while the adjustment layer is selected, I grab that. Okay, so I can play with the levels of this to control what I want that to look like. Again, more control over what that end product is doing. Now, if you notice, Sean Sarcona is not being adjusted at all. Because that text is completely white, any adjustments to hue and saturation, as far as saturation and hue go, do not affect that type because it's solid white. And that's the same thing for Photoshop. I would have to come in here and do a lightness on it. Sorry, leave that back to 0. I'd have to go here and change the lightness on this down, and now it'll start adding some color into the white areas. Otherwise, it doesn't affect it. Okay, just so you're aware, that's why I picked bright white for this. Also, because I picked complementary colors, most of the time my colors are going to match regardless. If I were just to have chosen 2 random colors that I think look good together, as I start using this hue and saturation, that may not always be the case. So when you do choose your colors, choose ones that will go together regardless of where they're at on the wheel. Okay. What else? One more thing that we could add to this just to make it, again, more fancy. Under a new solid, which is how we created these stripes, I'm going to give this, let's say, a blue color. That works perfect. I'm going to go here. I'll go to the pen tool. You're more familiar with that. So After Effects has a pen tool. We don't escape the pen tool just because we're in After Effects. Okay, so I make a shape. I hit M to go to the mask, or I can open up these things to open the mask up. And then I can feather this. And then I can expand it. There it is. And then I can invert it. Okay, so very quickly I can make a little vignette for this. If I hit T to go to the opacity, I could then control the opacity for that. So now I can really start to customize what this design looks like, and it's actually something that I can reuse over and over and over again. Something like a vignette, you will use over and over and over again, and because it's vector, we can use this on any document that we decide to use this on. I grab that one layer, I drag it into another layer, boom, vignette. Change of color, there it is. Okay? So there's lots of stuff that we can do to play with this. The idea here is that these concepts for this will apply to every single assignment that we've done. Every assignment we will set keyframes, we will easy ease them, and we will play with the graph editor with those. We will work with creating boring animations. Boop, boop, boop. That's boring. Those are more exciting. Like the name coming in from the top here that's kind of hidden. That's a little more exciting because you're not expecting it. And then those things kind of blipping out is cool, and then them falling apart. I'd also probably want to animate this vignette coming on and off because you can't see it too good up there, but it's definitely on my screen. I see a blue coloration right here. I'd need to colorize that. Okay, so somehow I would animate that on and off. Cool. So what I want you to do for the rest of the class is just play with it, tweak it, modify it some. You will find that some of these things you can easily change positions or whatever. So if I went to my Angry Bird, if I wanted to change the position of this and I did that, this is what's going to happen, is it's going to blip in, bloop, right there. But then at some point where I moved it, it's going to gradually animate back to its original position and then fall back down, okay? Because I set a keyframe way over here. So I need to make sure that when I set keyframes, I do them in the appropriate spot. I'll take that, and then I'll move this. And now it'll stay there and then just fall straight down. Okay? Sometimes it will be quicker just to delete keyframes and just re-add them in. Did I not? Oh my gosh. I did not ease any of these. Nobody told me. There we go. Okay? So play around with that for a little bit.